Hi everyone, welcome to Business for Builders. My name is Max Peterson. I'm the CEO of Smith & Sons. I am joined in the studio today by one of our Smith & Sons general contractors. Alex, welcome again. Thanks for popping in. Today, I called Alex because I really wanted to talk about an aspect of his business or his business model that is functioning extremely well. And it's not common to see this in a building company, but if you want to grow a business post $2 million a year, then in sales, in revenue, then you probably should have a listen to this podcast. Welcome to you if you're in YouTube land. I'm glad you stopped by as well. So look, Alex, like I said, thanks for joining us. Thanks for popping in very much last minute, late notice.
No worries.
Man, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because one of our other guys was asking about how it works. And essentially the subject matter that we're going to talk about is how we utilize the services of designers in our pre-building contract process. Now, some general contractors do time and materials or cost plus. This may or may not be relevant. Maybe you could shed some light on that too. But I think for us guys, what we do is with fixed price, quotes and fixed price building contracts is that, we want to really stipulate or point out or define or clarify exactly what's going to be included before we strike a blow in construction. So what I'm really interested to chat with you about today is, details around how we utilize the designer, how we charge for that and the interaction between you, the general contractor, and the client and the designer. So I think the easiest way, instead of me confusing our audience, is probably just think of it of one of the projects, one of the many that you've got going on at the moment, and how you walk through that process and really break it down for us. And then we'll just jam around that for the next 10 or 15 minutes because I really want our audience to grab this concept. And maybe they're not ready to go to a designer. You weren't ready to go to a designer 12, 15 months ago. But you're really living in the dream now. So let's just talk about it from go to way. We'll just start where you want to start, and we'll get it on. It'll be good.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, it depends on what stage the customer is in. So I'll start off with one like I'll give you an example. If the customer has no plans, no nothing, basically they come from a blank slate because there's times there where you can meet a customer that already has a design and a plan drawn up, and you are basically just taking the quantity off of that, just quoting off of that. So usually at that, if the customer calls us and they have nothing and they want us to design and plan it, like say a custom home or a large reno, even bathroom renos and kitchen renos, we use interior designers. But that is a choice that we offer to the client with our design and planning services. So when the client calls us, I usually meet them, have initial conversation, and I will give them three or four options depending on what their project is. If it's a regular reno, we will give them the option of standard design and planning services, which is basically just draw them up a set of plans of what they're looking for and then quote off that set of plans. There's no like interior design, there's no 3D renderings, there's no real interior designing that goes on. Basically, that's just like a bill of quantities, a quantity takeoff that's done off a set of plans, and that's our standard quantity takeoff services. Standard design and planning services. And we charge, depends on what the project we charge. We charge differently for bathrooms, kitchens, and new homes and stuff like that. So that comes into play after I meet the client, we talk some numbers about the project, and they want to move ahead with the project.
Can you give us an example of what a package, like give us a scenario example? We don't want to cover, because I was going to ask you, is the process the same for new homes and renos? Is it basically the same? Okay, good.
Yeah, it is the same. It is the exact same process. We just deliver different.
So what if you were doing for me a main floor? The whole kitchen, master bath, main bathroom, back to studs, let's say, like it's a pretty significant, it might be a $250,000 reno, right?
Yeah. So let's just say, $500,000, $250,000 reno. I'll go right back to the beginning. I'd come to the job site, I'd look at it with you, and I'd be like, hey Max, this looks like it's going to be, $230,000 to $280,000.
So you're giving them a price range.
You're giving them a price range because you guys want to be on the same page. Because if that person's like, I only have $110,000 to spend, well, doesn't matter what you.
But if they're good, and they go, okay, we were sort of thinking 200, but I guess we got to nail this down. What do you then, if it's a basic package, what do you charge them to do that?
So then I would offer them standard design and planning services for a kitchen. Anything usually around $100,000 to $200,000 is roughly $2,500, $3,500 for the design and planning services. and plus the cost of plans. So what we'll do is we'll quote you for a set of plans, and we will charge you when the plans are done. So because plans we might not know, they might be different every time. So we'll tell you, $2,500, and then we might need $800 for a set of plans, or $1,000 for a set of
Now,
plans.
are you talking full-blown construction blueprints, or are you just talking concepts?
It depends on the project. If we don't need permits for that project,
Right.
we can shave off. We don't need a full permit set of drawings,
Got it.
right? We just need enough to quote off of and get our concepts. Now, if a customer has more demands and they want to see 3D renderings and they want to see what everything looks like before that, that's a step above. Then we go and hire an interior designer. Now you can outsource that. You can create a relationship or a partnership with a interior designer in your area where when it comes to that job and it comes to that process, you hand it off to the interior designer, and you can talk with the interior designer on what they charge, how they charge. So basically you're almost selling the package for the interior designer. So when it gets to them, you have enough money to cover them. But that's where you work with them hand in hand, where I would go look at the project. I'd come back to the office and I would send it to my interior designer and I'd be like, hey, these clients are looking for an interior designer. This is the gist of the project. What would you charge? Now my interior designer would set off a quote. I would mark that up and I would add that into my initial offering for interior designing fees. So I have that would be the second tier of services, would be design and planning services with interior designing. And that's where we get, like I said, the 3D renderings, and you actually work with an interior designer. Some of them set how many meetings you can go with them. They usually allot how much time you work with them. But we do that for home builds. Every home build pretty much needs interior designing. It's standard for all our home build projects, but for renos, it is optional.
Okay. So what about packages? Is that something that you use, like other than the two you've just outlined, the standard versus the standard with the interior design? Does it go, or is it basically defined by the size of the project? It's
basically defined by the size of the project and what the client wants from the project. Like, we also have the quantity takeoff service, which I charge a flat rate fee now of $1,000.
Right.
But most people don't go for that anymore because most of our clients now are at the stage of buying. We're so busy that it's almost, it's almost a waste of time to do that process, because it's such a thin process that you don't get really good numbers, whereas someone's going to pay the extra little bit of money and get a set of plans and get the defined numbers for their project.
Is it fair to say too that you can get to a bracketed price range pretty quickly, like almost in the first meeting? Like, you go to someone with a large renovation and they're sort of, we're talking about the project. For you can sort of stand back and go, well, look, based on my experience, this is probably a $300,000 to $400,000 bill.
A good contractor should. Now, don't hold it against a contractor, if he says he has to go home and take a look at it. Because I've done that numerous times where I'm just not comfortable enough because it might be a really old home. The customers might be, in my line of questioning, there might be something particular in there that they want that I don't know a price on, that I could see that's expensive. Like, hey, we want a gold plated, freestanding bathtub. Well, that could potentially be, who knows what that potential price could be. So I just try to get a ballpark so they're on the same page, because a good contractor should know that, a full gut bathroom or a full gut kitchen reno, I don't care where you are now, you're going to struggle to start that at $50,000. Mm-hmm. So you can easily start with the customer and be like, listen, we haven't started, we don't do kitchen projects. We haven't done one lately where it was under $50,000, right? So I try to get that price conversation with the customer going, because you don't want to sell them design and planning services before they can't afford the reno.
No. Look, and that's why I'm saying, when you're on the spot there and you can ascertain fairly accurately, and I'm talking within sort of 50 to 100 grand, you straight away get some insight from the owner as to what their expectation was. And we talk a lot about, breaking the ice and being the person that brings money to the table as far as the conversation's concerned.
Yeah.
What about some of the micro? So let's say you're talking to me about this $250,000 to $350,000 reno. Can you run us through the whole process? I mean, this might be a big call, and maybe allude to some of the costs. If I said, very similar to the one that we've got down the road here that's right on the lake, that process whereby you go to this home that is what it is, and it might be 30 or 40 years, never been renovated, or maybe renovated in the last 20 years, and then just allude to some of the process, like there's a little. It's variable because every client's different, every job's different. I get it, but for the benefit of our viewers and our listeners, what we're trying to do is create a bit of a scenario so we can get some context around how we go and utilize those designers. So the first meeting, you'll go out there with or without a designer. Let's say it needs some design work. Like I'm reconfiguring like the basement, and I want to have a nano door, and I want to reconfigure it so the entertainment space is bigger. Like that's fairly demanding for just the average general contractor to get his head around. So let's say, do you go out there in the first meeting, because you got to establish the budget, but let's say you have. On the phone, I've said to you, look, I'm going to spend $250,000, maybe a little bit more if it needs it. So in your mind, you know that the budget is fairly on point. Do you then take a designer to the first meeting? Okay, run me through the process, and I will try. That's a negative. That's a head shake. But I'll try and play the design. I'll try and play the homeowner to try and tick some of these boxes, right? Because what I really want to do is I want to run the scenario that you do need to include a designer, and we do need to get some of these concepts, not necessarily construction.
They come in a little later down the line. Right. You want to sell for the designer. You don't want the you don't
so
let
how
the
do you
designer
sell
for
to
you.
how do you sell design services to me, the client? What is it about having the designer in your pocket that actually helps you add value to the discussion and then close?
Yeah, it depends on the client. It's just another tool in the tool belt in case the client wants that extra bit of service.
But what if the guys have got this tool on their tool belt, they don't know how to use it? Like I was talking to Corey, right?
Yeah.
And mate, there's fresh, right?
Yeah.
Out of the box. How does what I want you to do is talk to this guy who's very new to the whole concept of fixed price quotes, renovation.
You got to trial and error a little bit yourself. I can't tell you exactly.
But can you give us 70% of the process?
Well, yeah, that's the process that like I said, I go to the meeting and then I sell the job as I would normally sell the job to a client, and then that's where I would evaluate the project. You know, if it's a bathroom reno, I might just mention to them, hey, listen, we have, because all our projects come with standard design and planning, you know, the services. So we have a project consultant where that project consultant, he's not a designer. That person is just works
like a mediator.
Yeah, is pretty much the contractor position, but that person doesn't have to sell and doesn't deal with anything on the front end. Basically, that person, after the person, which is me, who does the selling, I've got the job, I've collected that money from the client or collected the deposit from the client. That's when you want to start moving stuff. You don't want to start moving anything in your kitchen until you got money from your clients. I don't do that anymore. That's a waste of your time, because you can waste half a day putting together permits for somebody, putting together documents for somebody, and then pull a no-show, right? So now my policy is pay or play, right? So it's weeded out a lot of the clients who don't want to pay,
so break that down. When you say pay to play, break that. I couldn't envisage anyone going and getting permits without having something in writing and some money in the bank.
Yeah.
So break that down. If I was serious about this, what is it that you're going to offer, and what's that going to cost me as a client?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go back a little bit to the beginning to that, but yeah, basically the whole process is you want to follow a process of give and take. So you sometimes have to start out with the give, and then
good point.
Yeah, and then because you are coming off the heels, you are coming to the client's house. They probably got you got to build some rapport. So you got to show and build value, and you stick your neck out a little bit first. Now, if the customer doesn't respond to that, then you start asking, is this customer really a buyer? And what I mean by that is if after I'm done my explanation of the design and planning services, and I go, would you like, if they're happy with the numbers, and I'm like, would you like to move forward with the design and planning services, or what design and planning services you want to move forward with? That reaction there will tell me everything.
So you're doing two things. You're separating the players from the pretenders, and you're advancing the deal by leading the way. Yeah. And I think that is supremely important if guys want to not waste time with tire kickers.
And I don't spend more than 1 hour in one meeting with a client. Like sometimes if I have to go home to the office and drop some plans to get a little more accurate numbers, I might put a couple more hours into it just to get more accurate numbers when I give the client back the numbers. But I generally try to spend no more than an hour on a meeting and an hour on paperwork to get them their numbers. Now that should be plenty enough karmatically for you to give them an offer for them to see some value and reciprocate. And in the past I would be flexible, but now in the world we're in, it is I don't even budge until I have, because we have so many clients knocking on our door.
Yeah.
I literally just cater to the clients who respect us and see our value, instead of somebody, because the example I'm going to give you is if you've asked a client, you've sat down, maybe you've been there for 2 hours, you've explained everything, and they just want to milk you for information, which is not a bad thing. You just have to recognize that and put your foot down and be like, hey, listen, I understand you guys have a lot of questions. Looks like you're willing to move forward. Would you like to move to the design and planning phase where we can talk about all this stuff? So you want to usher them into there, because they're going to try to get them themselves without paying that money.
I find that you let them go there a little bit, because they just go there and you can't just cut them off.
Yeah.
But at some point when there's a break in the traffic early on, you then want to do what you just did.
Yeah, you
and
want to make an offer.
Out.
Yeah,
we're not going to go and start talking backsplash tiles and paint colors.
I stop them.
Nothing.
Like you try not to want to interrupt your clients, but you want to stop them from getting. It's called feature brain, where they start thinking about all the colors, all the finishes, and then when they start thinking about that, you kind of pull them away from the sales department. So you want to keep them away from that. And how I do that is like, don't worry about the details now,
because they will, by nature, they will just suck the life out of you and just
that's all they know.
And you know what? Most general contractors can't say no, or don't have an alternative route.
Yeah,
so they just go, well, I guess I'm here. I've got to answer these 5,000 questions. When it's like, hang on, you do that if you want to go broke.
You need to set massive boundaries
Yeah.
when you go to clients' houses.
But that's down to having a systemized sales process.
For sure, yeah.
You're
because you set those boundaries naturally with the process that you do. And if the customer does not respect your boundaries, well, you know right away on the very first meeting, instead of, when the check is signed, or when there's some.
So I think we got to set up. I think we talked about this probably over 12 months ago, about setting up the gates.
Yes.
You can't bypass a gate.
No, you cannot. You can't miss one. There's a psychological process the customer has to follow through. Just like, dating, right? You say, you use explain, you don't want to go right to intercourse. You want to have the foreplay. You want to, it's going to be a much more digestible experience if they walk through all the gates. Now, if they're really pushy people and they want to try to take the lead, you got to remember the customer is actually hiring you to set the tone and take the lead. So you don't want if you start thinking, oh, well, the customer looks like they're doing a good job doing it, they're going to drive it off a cliff. They're not. They're hiring you to do the job. So you need to set the tone, take the lead, deliver your boundaries, and they will follow. If they're a customer who's looking to really do what they're saying they're going to do, and they want to get a new kitchen, and they're serious about it, and they're respectful people, if you do what you need to do, what has been taught to me from Smith and Sons, and follow that process. The customers they treat you 100%.
And I think there's nothing wrong with clients wanting to take the lead or be involved, but at some point you've got to calculate, is this the client that I want to work with?
Yes.
And I think that's, I think what you've put together, in conjunction with the Smith & Sons brand, is a very solid process. And I'm telling you, from what I've seen in the last 60 days, it just creates a whole bunch of blue sky. Now, it doesn't come without its challenges, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think, this is where you're going, is to really business mastery.
Yes.
I mean, that's essentially what you're talking about. I mean, I called you up for this podcast. I don't know what time it is, but you're like, well, I was heading out of the office anyway. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And your business is actually better off. You're better off for it. Yeah. So, I think with having a designer in your pocket, whether it's somebody on staff, whether it's a project consultant more so than a designer, or whether you've got a project consultant who's a mediator between the client and you, the builder, the general contractor, who then outsources, design work as required.
Yeah.
I think you've got to, as much as I'm trying to nail down an exact process for our listeners and our viewers, there is definitely some finessing and some spontaneity that's required for you as the builder, because the next builder, you like Alex, you're different to me, I'm different to you. Yeah. All the guys in the group have got their own idiosyncrasies. They have to figure some shit out for themselves.
When you get to a certain point, though, it is pretty much mandatory to have a designer. Right. I did have one in-house for a little bit. I'll probably try to go back to one, maybe having one in-house if I get to that point. But there's enough of my resources, like you said. I've already built some relationships with independent interior designers.
Yeah.
And that you can do too if you're worried about taking on that burden. in-house and you don't have that solved, go on Google and be like interior designers in your city and call them up and just tell them who you are and ask them that if they're interested in the type of work you're doing, and don't force them to do it, but just give them the opportunity and you'll find somebody.
I think it's like putting a band together. There's a chemistry thing that's got to be at work, man. You build business off the back of good company culture and your ability to recruit good talent. Yeah. And whether that's, subs or, contract designers or whatever, you've got to be able to mesh gears consistently and be on the same page, because it's, you're dealing with people, clients, but you then got these interdependent relationships between builders, general contractors, and the designers. And so it's, it's just super important. So I guess, I think it's fair to say that if you can blend those relationships between you, the general contractor, and designers, there's some distinct advantages, because I know that clients have signed up with you because you've had the designer services, which is remarkable. I know that there's clients that you've had who have spent more money because of a designer. So I look at that and I think there is, but you're a very systemized strategic leader. Your work ethic is off the charts. You're absolutely convinced that you're going to build massive business. So your level of conviction is definitely fairly unique. And I just want to say that, because it is a caveat. You get out of the business what you put in. I mean, you're an absolute student of the industry and of business. And so you can't just sit on your couch and expect all of this success to come to you.
Get what you put in. If you want to run a $100,000 business, work one day a week, right? If you want to run a $10 million business, work accordingly.
Yeah. And right? I think there's a startup. I would say, you've been with the business with Smithies now for 18 months or something. You're still in a startup phase doing business the new way. Yeah. But you've created remarkable momentum in your business.
The world has changed, though. The world is forced everybody to. I think everybody is starting from zero now, no matter who you are, because the world has changed, people have changed, and everything has changed.
So we've had to adapt. There's no question. Yeah. But if you have a startup mentality, like eventually you want to get to the point where you're not having to run as hard for as many weeks in the year. You'd like to have a couple of weeks where you can, sip martinis and watching the sun go down. But because we enjoy the game, you and I both enjoy the game, it's hard to sort of go and enjoy more than 2 weeks on the beach, because you're dying to get back into it, right? Yeah. And that helps. That's why, because you love the game as well. Yeah. So I think that's a very intangible, distinct advantage that both you and I have, right? Yeah. But we're just trying to help everyone, to put together some systems and processes and understand what tools and resources can really help, weed out the clients that you shouldn't be working for, and really highlight the clients, that you really need to pay attention to and that you need to serve really well. So, look, man, I appreciate you coming in. If you've got any questions as it relates to interior designers or the services or maybe the packages or anything like that, feel free to email me at max@businessforbuilders.ca. You could text us on 250-241-8866, or you can maybe pop us some questions in below and we will answer those. But be sure to like and subscribe, and certainly share this contact with someone that you might know wants to build a high-performance business. Thanks again, Al.
No problem.
We'll catch you around soon. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.